mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episodes 1 through 3 in a non-spoilery fashion of the new HBO Max original series Tokyo Vice. Tokyo Vice is executive produced by both Ansel Elgort and Michael Mann. Michael Mann, the legendary director who I'm sure you probably have all heard of. He actually directed the first episode, which feels very much like you're watching a abbreviated version of Heat. I don't know where that came from, but the show Tokyo Vice is essentially kind of like a fish out of water tale, but set within Japan and within I guess this complex dynamic between the Japanese media, the Yakuza, and the police. And Ansel Elgort plays Jake Adelstein, who is the lead character in the show. And Jake is that person. He's in Tokyo. He's trying to get a job with this newspaper. And once he gets the job, now he's trying to keep it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Jake a little bit later, but the main thing to take away, I think, from Jake is that he is, again, like I said, a fish out of water. And what's integral to the show, at least throughout these first 3 episodes, is that Jake needs to learn the cultural dynamic between those 3 parties, the police, the Yakuza, and the media, and how they kind of work together to keep the peace. You know, when most people become journalists, they do it for like wholesome reasons. You know, you want to tell the truth. You want to be honest with people. You want to get the news out there. You want to be informative. Jake even tells that. Said something like his father said that the newspaper documents the little bit, the additional knowledge that the world gains each day. Like each day the world gains some knowledge and the newspaper documents it. So you come in with this very wholesome idea of what you're going to do, and Jake goes over here to Tokyo and it's not how he expected at all. So I'm going to get a little bit into that, but I want to talk first a little bit about some of the characters that are in this show. Just kind of get, like I said, it's a non-spoilery, so there's a lot of things I'd like to discuss that I won't, but if you hang around for when I start talking about episodes 4 through 8, you'll get plenty of that analysis. But right now, I just kind of want to talk about things in an overarching sense and give you guys an idea what kind of show this is and whether or not I think you should watch it, or for you to make the decision of whether or not you should watch it. So Ken Watanabe stars as Katagiri, which is he's one of the police officers in this show. I've loved Ken ever since The Last Samurai. I think that's like the first thing I saw him in. And he seems to always play someone who you can't help but like. He's a nice cop who's kind of like showing Jake the ropes. But one thing that's cool about this show, which I actually, about midway through these first 3 episodes, like midway through the second episode, I was feeling like the show was moving kind of slow. But now I'm starting to get a better idea of why it was like that. And what I'm saying about Ken Watanabe's character kind of feeds into that because, you know, I said that he's kind of showing Jake the ropes, but Jake had to learn the ropes to even get a chance to talk to Katagiri. So, and to be in a position to where Katagiri could help him. And over these first 3 episodes, we see Jake learning just how he fits in within this world, learning how things operate, what he needs to do, what he needs to avoid doing, and then getting into a position to where we can see him implement those things. Like, okay, I know that Jake learned blah, 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 blah. Oh, here's Jake implementing blah, 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 blah. And here's how now this works out for him when the thing that makes sense to us Americans didn't work. So I thought that was an interesting thing to point out, that he's being taught the ropes by Ken Watanabe's character, but he kind of had to already learn the ropes already to even get a chance to talk to Ken's character. Then we have Rachel Keller as Sam. I know her most as Sid from Legion, but she works in what appears to be like a nightclub / like burlesque house. Like, I don't know if it's like a whore house. Like, I don't know if these women are having sex for money completely, but whatever it is, they're doing extra shit for extra tips. And that's where she works at. And her role seems kind of unclear right now. She's good at the job, and she's made a lot of money. She's saving up money for a reason that I'm not going to get into. But she's saving up money. She's working at this place. But her role is kind of unclear because kind of right now, I feel like the connection, like using her as like a way to connect Jake, which is Ansel's character, with the Yakuza, I feel like it's a very thin connection right now. And they're going to have to do a little bit more to justify Rachel Keller's character in this show. Because right now, it kind of just feels like she's being shoehorned in as a part love interest, which I can't state enough how much I hate forced romances in shows. Like, I should be able to watch a show about a fish out of water white journalist working with a Japanese cop on solving a mystery involving the Yakuza without feeling like they have to force a romantic relationship in. Like, shit can just have, like, everybody don't gotta be fucking somebody all the time. But either way, it feels like it feels like they have shoehorned her in for the purposes of being a romantic interest. I feel hesitant to say this, but I really do think it's the case. Having an extra white person in this show to make it so that people feel less like they're watching, because like the show is all Japanese people, it's virtually all spoken in Japanese, and then you have like these two white people, and it almost feels like, because it's based on a memoir written by Jake Adelstein, so we know that he is a real player in this. He's a real person. He's a real white guy who is among all these people in Tokyo. And Sam's character might be a real person that he actually encountered in real life, whatever. But I need to feel Sam's importance to the story outside of just like, oh, this is somebody he's going to end up fucking in one episode. Because like I said, it feels like that combined with like, hey, we need to have a couple white people in here just so that people aren't completely turned away from watching this show because it's all Japanese people and all Japanese language with subtitles. And I know that's a turnoff for a lot of people, not for me, but yeah, they need to work a little bit harder. I'm only 3 episodes. Well, we're all only 3 episodes in, but I think we need to do a little bit more with Sam's character, and they're starting to kind of unfold it a little bit, but right now she's kind of mainly been used to again be another example of how things operate in Japan. This idea of like, you don't just go ask people questions. You give them something in exchange for information, whether that's money, whether that's food, whether that's champagne, whatever it may be. You offer something in exchange for information. And she seems to be another vehicle to make that point too. So waiting to see how we integrate Sam into this a little bit more. But yeah, that's what we got so far. After episode 2, I was feeling like the show was moving kind of slow. Like I said, we were spending a lot of time getting acclimated to the culture and how everything works between these different parties. But like I said, they needed to show that dynamic between these 3 parties. And now that we have it, we start to see Jake grasp it as well. Because we're learning this along with Jake. And now that Jake seems to have a grasp on it, things are now starting to work a little bit better for him. So like that slowness that you feel in that first 2 to 3 episodes, I'd say the first 2 episodes, that slowness doesn't look as slow in retrospect, because now you can see, okay, here's what he thought he needed to do. Here's how it didn't work. Here's him learning what he's supposed to do. Here's him still not doing that and still not learning. And then now here's him starting to integrate these things into how he behaves. And now here he is finding success. And now that he's got it, we got it. And now the show can shoot forward. So like, I feel a little bit less apprehensive about talking about this show being entertaining, because like I said, I felt it was dragging a little bit about midway through episode 2, but I feel a lot differently about that now. I don't want to go too deeply into what Jake learns exactly about the world in which he operates, aside from what I mentioned about you need to offer something in exchange for information. But to give a kind of a gumped down idea of what's happening plot-wise, there appears to be 2 warring factions within the Yakuza who are seemingly, and we don't know which one, if it's both, if it's neither, but who, as of right now, seem to be tied to these murders and suicides. There's a connection. There's been a murder and a suicide so far in the show. They seem to be connected, and their connection seems to have something to do with the Yakuza, and we don't know what it is, but there's also them having two warring factions. So you got fish out of water Jake, you got him learning the culture, learning how to operate amongst the media and the police, and seeing how the police and the Yakuza interact with one another, and learning how he fits into that. And then you also now have him having kind of like stumbled upon this story that seems to be connected to the Yakuza, but he hasn't really kind of put the pieces together yet. Neither have we. So that's kind of what the story is about. And it's starting to take form after these first 3 episodes. I really expect these next 5 episodes to actually be really fucking good. But so far, so good. I am enjoying it, but I expect it to really pick up now. So a couple of things I want to talk about with Jake. He gets treated like shit at this newspaper by virtually everyone except these 2 friends that he makes. None of his stories get published. He gets shit on and yelled at all the time by anyone who's above him in rank. And I think that does a lot to make you feel sympathetic to Jake's character, because we can all kind of understand that idea. Even though I'm not a white guy, I can still understand going to Japan and feeling completely out of place, not understanding your role within that culture, and then simultaneously, while you're trying to work through this confusion and figure out everything that's going on, having people just coming down hard on you all the time. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but this makes you feel sympathetic to Jake until in episode, I think it's 3, we get a little bit more of an idea on Jake and his relationship with his family, particularly his sister, what's going on there and why he's in Japan. And we don't get a lot. We get a little bit, but the little bit that we get makes Jake look incredibly selfish, I think. And it takes away from how I think we're supposed to feel sympathetic to Jake. Now, I don't know if that's intentional, if we're going to learn more about this story and it's going to make more sense. But as of right now, Jake really seems like a selfish fucking prick. And then now I no longer feel bad for him. And I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's what they accomplished. And I'm hoping we're going to learn a little bit more about this dynamic between him and his family and why he's in Tokyo in the first place that will make Jake feel a little bit more, not even sympathetic, just acceptable. Like, I don't even need to feel bad for him. I just need to not think he's a piece of shit. and we're kind of far away from that. One thing about this show that I think is cool, and I'm going to talk about a couple of these things in my thoughts at the end, but one thing I think is cool about this show is that I can never really tell if the Yakuza is cooperating by giving up the true perpetrator of a crime in order to keep the peace with the police, or if they have such a stranglehold, the leaders have such a stranglehold on that organization that people who didn't do the crime will take the fall for it, and the police will arrest that person knowing they didn't do it just so they can close the case and keep the peace. And I think it's the latter. I'm not clear on it, but I'm pretty sure it's like, because I feel like they've given looks like, oh, you need 2 people? You know what to do. And then like 2 people go, we did it, arrest us. And then they get arrested. And I think the police, because this happens right in front of, what was his name? I've already forgotten, Katagiri. Look, I've already forgotten his character's name. This happens in front of Katagiri and he accepts it. He arrests these people and he leaves. And I like the unspoken idea of like, I know these ain't the 2 motherfuckers that did it, but at the end of the day, I need to arrest some people for this case, and I don't want to do anything that's going to cause the issues between these 2 clans to further escalate. So I'm not entirely clear on what happens in these situations. It happens a couple of times, but I think that's what it is, and I like both of those things. I like the idea of them giving up people who didn't do the crime and the police knowing they didn't do the crime and accepting it because that's just how things work there. And I also like the idea of not being quite sure which thing is happening. So I really dig that about this show. I like to see a little bit more of that and get a little bit more clarity on it. There are also some interesting backstories that I think the show should explore. Like I mentioned, everything going on with Jake and his relationship. We find out that, his relationship with his family. We find out that Jake's not even his name. It's his middle name, but that's not even his name. Why does he go by something different? Like, I mean, it could be something interesting. It could just be like, hey, I'm going to Japan. I want to start over. I want to have a different name now. Like, I don't know, but there's some things I like to see them explore. I like to see a little bit more of that backstory, and we still need Rachel Keller's character to, I think, open up a little bit more too, because she's still very much playing the game of, I'll answer your questions as long as you are providing me with something, whether that's food, whether that's liquor, whatever the case may be. And I feel like she hasn't been at all forthright with him. So looking to find out some more things about her. All right, so I'm going to wrap up with a couple of thoughts on the series. I'm going to start by saying I do plan on covering the remaining 5 episodes. I believe they're going to release 2 a week for each of the next 3 weeks. So that will fill out the 8 episode. Or wait, no, that's not right. Because they released 3. Maybe it's a different show that's doing 2 a week. Because 2 a week doesn't add up. But maybe that HBO Max does do that, though. They might do 2 next week, 2 the following week, and then just have the finale on that 3rd week. But whatever the case may be, I plan on covering these remaining episodes. I just wanted to start out by saying that. So you should be able to find those here on Thursdays, which today is Wednesday. You can expect a video for episode 4 or episode 4 and 5, whatever they put out tomorrow. There's a lot of interesting framing on this show. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of shots where Ansel Elgort is like literally head and shoulders above everyone else. And I thought originally, I was like, well, that's kind of a heavy-handed way to do the fish out of water thing. Like, hey, look at the white guy sticking out like a sore thumb among all these Japanese people. And I kind of rolled my eye at it. And then I found out he's 6'4". I'm like, okay, well, shit, then you don't really have a choice. You got a 6'4" white man in Japan. You're making that fish out of water comparison whether you want to or not. I don't know if there's a way you can film a 6'4" guy in Japan and not have him stand out, unless you got all the motherfuckers standing on fucking stilts or shit. But I thought that was interesting. Another thought. Ansel speaks really good Japanese on this show. And I heard that he actually learned Japanese for this show. And it doesn't feel like he's reading or anything like that. Like he's doing a really good job. Another thing I found interesting, and this is kind of in the vein of the fish out of water thing, and trying to just like not to say the fish out of water thing, but like trying to understand why certain decisions were made. There's a whole lot of characters smoking cigarettes on this show, to the point where it stood out to me. And I always feel like it's when I see that in modern shows, that is just it's an uncreative way of making someone look cool or making someone look badass. And we're like, oh, we're doing a show about the Yakuza. We got to have mad motherfuckers smoking cigarettes. And I mean, they smoking cigarettes all the time. And again, just like the Ansel being taller than everyone else made me roll my eyes until I found out he was 6'4", I rolled my eyes at the constant cigarette use. I'm like, okay, I get it. They're fucking badasses. Showing me them smoking cigarettes, one, isn't quite enough. It's just me thinking you think that's enough. That I'm supposed to go, oh, like I'm dumb enough to go, oh, they must be tough. They smoke cigarettes. Like I'm like a fucking 14-year-old or some shit. Once I got out of my own head, I posed the question to myself, and I think I know the answer to this. Is it less that they want to show us that these people are badasses, and more so the reality of how people behave in Japan? And it seems like that to me because we've gotten so staunchly opposed to cigarettes here. Because if you look at old American movies, you would see that all the time. Motherfuckers smoking in their offices, smoking on buses, airplanes, trains, like all kinds of shit. Everybody's smoking. You got the police, the detectives, everybody's smoking. And again, my perspective as someone in, say, 1998 who's watching a movie from 1965 or whatever, I might look at it as like, oh, they're smoking cigarettes. That makes them badass. When in reality, that was just life back then, and it seems weird to me because right now, you can't smoke anywhere. So it's like, hey, we got this small little 2 foot by 2 foot sections out here in the snow that you can stand in and smoke. If you could bet it's to stand outside with no coat on for however long it takes you to get through that cigarette. Like, I think it was the Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock, one of them made a joke or something like, it was Dave Chappelle because he's the one that smokes on stage. He said something like, you can't even smoke on Earth no more. And that's how it feels here. So it just made me wonder if it's less about, if it's never been about how we're meant to perceive cigarette smokers, And it's been more so about just displaying the reality of what it is like in that place. And it just seems foreign to me because we just don't have that in America anymore. They might still smoke like they might still smoke in Japan in 2022 the same way we did here in 1965. They just didn't fucking get rid of it like we did. So I just thought that was an interesting note. Just me kind of accepting that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be such a cocky prick and maybe you're wrong about what this show is trying to do. So a little bit of humility from me, which you will rarely see. So document it. Let's see. Oh, there's an interesting scene. Again, another one that I could talk about the culture scenes in this show for a really long time. Like, there's all sorts of things that kind of give you an idea of what the culture is like here. But there's a cool scene where the boss of one of the factions is meeting with the police. And the police are kind of like, hey, man, look, we got some foreign dignitaries coming to town. Can you keep shit cool while they're here? And he's like, yeah, what do you need from me? And there's like, I think there's like 4 cops in the room and this guy. Well, I don't know if they're all cops. Maybe a couple of them were his soldiers or whatever. But there's 4 other people aside from this boss in this room. And they have these bowls of soup in front of them. And I think like napkins and water or something like that. I don't know. And they continue to show it just sitting there. And they're all talking. And then eventually the boss takes a drink of the soup. And then everyone else takes a drink of the soup. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like, okay, even the police are like, we ain't touching that until he touch it first. That's some pretty hardcore shit. Another cultural thing, white women seem to be very valued there. Sam, Rachel Keller's character, makes the second most amount of money in this burlesque house that she works in. And men are always asking about her. Hey, can you bring the white girl over here? Bring the blonde over here. They have a gaiju or a gaijin or something, a term for like a white person. Bring that person over here. White women seem to be coveted there in Japan. Conversely, white men seem to be hated. Jake is, like I said, Jake's treated like shit the whole time. And I think a lot of that is like, how dare this white man come over here and think he can do what we do and that he belongs with us. Typical nerve of the white man to think that he can just go wherever he wants and life will just accommodate him. And so they come down hard on Jake all the time. And he's even more hated than women. And because like in most facets of life, you could see the disparity between the way men are treated versus the way women are treated. You just look at the wage gap, anything, whatever. You can see the discrepancy, the way we are hypocritical with how we handle birthrights and the ability to do what you want with your body. Like how we got, women can't get abortions, but nobody tells men what they can do with their body. That kind of shit, right? You can see it here, the difference between the way men and women are treated. But over in Japan, even as a man, he seems to be less respected than the women who are less respected than the Japanese men. There's a moment where a guy calls into the newspaper. And these are the moments where they just exist to give you that context on the culture and not so much because it's an important event that matters to the story. But a guy calls, and he's like, yeah, my newspaper didn't get delivered today. And Jake says something, and he's like, oh, he uses the word gaiju or gaija, whatever, the word for the indicate that he a white dude. Like, oh, it's a white motherfucker. You go, put somebody important on the phone or whatever. He grabs his immediate boss, his editor, and he hands her the phone, and she answers. He's like, a woman? That's almost as bad as the white guy. And it's like this guy just appalled that like he called this newspaper and had to speak to first a white person and then to a woman. And I just thought that was interesting that in Japan, white men are looked at as equal to or less than their women, whereas conversely, white men rule everything. Here, they're the top of the pecking order. So I thought that was interesting. And then lastly, there's a scene where we see one of Jake's homies and he's like with a guy in an alley. And I can't tell what's going on, but when they get into a bar, Jake asks him about the guy, and he's like, what you talking about? I wasn't with nobody. And I don't know if I was meant to take away from that this guy is gay and he's trying to keep it a secret, or if he was doing something shady in this alley and he doesn't want to admit that it was going on. But I could have swore I saw the other guy kind of like fixing his collar or something like that. Something you wouldn't do if you're doing a shady drug or dangerous business deal. You're not going to be operating a guy and he's like, yo, let me fix your collar, man. Make sure you look good. Like, that's not going to happen. So I think we're meant to take from it that he's gay. And then I'm wondering again, now, back into the cultural aspect of things, I don't know how homosexuality is looked at in Japan. I know how it's looked at here, but I don't know how it's looked at in Japan. Could this be a situation where it could be very detrimental to him if it came out that he was gay, and not detrimental like people are gonna make fun of him or he might get fired from his job? Like, could he get killed for being gay? Like, I don't know. Like some Yakuza guy finds out. I don't know, but that's something I'm looking forward to finding out. So I'm enjoying this show. I'll be covering the remaining episodes. Let me know what you thought of the first 3 in the comments. I went 25 minutes without spoiling. I did have 3 episodes worth of material though. But until tomorrow, peace.